Hi, I'm Lucy from Sew Essential and I'm here today to show you how to sew a bound buttonhole. So this is a technique often used on tailored coats and jackets, and it gives a super neat professional finish, but it's not as difficult to achieve as you might think. The method I'm going to show you today is more aimed at those heavier weight fabric garments like coats and jackets, but you can use it on other garments like blouses, and you still may well pick up a few tips from this video anyway. So do stay tuned for that. Everything I talk about today is available on our lovely website. You'll find links to our website and all the products below. And if you like what you see, please like and subscribe, because every Friday I bring you a video packed full of sewing goodness. And if you can't wait a whole week, do jump on and check out our other social accounts below, and you can get daily doses of sewing inspiration. So let's get started with the tutorial. So I thought we'd start by having a look at a bound buttonhole for anyone who doesn't know what one is. So here's a jacket that I made recently, and you can see here that the buttonhole is finished with two little fabric lips rather than zigzag stitches from your sewing machine. Now, it's not highly visible, this fabric, because it's so dark, but I have got another sample to show you, so don't worry about that. But that's the right side. You've got two little lips that finish the edge of the buttonhole, and then if I show you the wrong side, you just hand sew the fabric round the buttonhole on the inside. So again, you've got that lovely neat finish without any zigzag stitches or any visible stitching. So it's a common method for jackets and coats and tailored garments, but you can do it on blouses and things as well. But here again is the sample I was talking about. So you can see there I've used a contrasting dark denim just so that you can get a clearer idea of what's going on. But they are two little lips that are finishing the buttonhole and that have been inserted into, this would be the main fabric of the garment. And then I haven't finished this one on the back yet, but what would happen is on your facing or whatever backing you had for the jacket or coat, you would then position your fabric. You'd cut a hole in it like so, position it like so, and then hand stitch around the edge there. But I'll show you how to do all of that in this video. But the first step is to create the lips. So I've got here a piece of the dark denim, and this strip measures 3/4 of an inch wide. So I've used my Prim measuring gauge to cut this for accuracy, and a ruler, because accuracy and precision is key with this technique. And what I've done is I've cut a nice long strip of the denim, because I want plenty to work with either side, because if it doesn't work out or I have any issues, I've already got my strip created and I've got some excess there that I can go back and use. So I'll probably do a buttonhole that's an inch wide. So I'll only actually really need 2 inches of this this way. But obviously I've got a lot more there, which will just give me some to play around with as I'm making it. But we're going to take this over to the sewing machine and I'll show you what to do next. Okay, so here we've got our strip of denim fabric, and what we need to do now is fold that right sides together and then stitch down the centre of it. So you've got to be quite accurate here, as I mentioned earlier. Now, on my machine, if it's folded in half, the width is about the width of the little bit of needle plate between the feed dogs. So I use that as my guide, and you just want to stitch. You've got to be nice and accurate with this, but you just want to stitch down the centre of that strip of fabric. Depending on your machine, you might need to use a foot that's got a bit more contact with the fabric, but on this machine I'm using the Brilliant 75Q by Husqvarna. It's not an issue for me, it will just feed through beautifully. So I'm just going to show you how to do this. So I'm just letting the fabric feed through, making sure that it's staying in the centre of the needle plate, that gap in the needle plate between the feed dogs, and I'm making sure the raw edges of the fabric are lining up as well. Okay, and you can see there I've stitched accurately down the centre of the strip of fabric. Okay, so here we have our lip, which has been sewn accurately and carefully down the centre. So now I'm going to cut this so that it's the right length for my buttonhole. So I'm going to make a buttonhole that's 1.5 inches. So I want to leave some excess either side of the 1.5 inches. So I'm just going to mark that like so. So that's my first piece that's 1.5 inches long. Just got a bit of fluff on there. Let's get rid of that. And then I'm going to do another piece down here that is 1.5 inches long. So I'm going to mark that onto the fabric because that's going to tell us where to start and stop stitching as well. So you do want to be accurate with this. I'm using a Chaco pen, which I really like using for jobs like this because they do give you nice accuracy. They've got this little roller on the end and they allow you to draw quite precise lines. So these are available on our site in a number of colours. I'll pop a link below to those. And then we're just going to cut these strips, but I'm going to cut them leaving some excess at either end, and you'll see why. It just makes things a bit easier if you've got a bit of excess at either end. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take our main fabric, so this would be your front of your jacket or whatever you were making, and you'd want to position the lips with the raw edges together like so, and we're going to position them. Obviously you'd have marked on your fabric where you need your buttonhole to be, and then we're just going to position them like so, and then we're going to take them over to the sewing machine and just stitch down the stitching line accurately on top of that stitching line, stopping and starting where the white marks are because that's where we want our buttonhole to begin and end. So now we're going to sew the lips to the main garment fabric. So I've pinned them in place, but you want the raw edges of the lips to be lined up next to each other, and then these are the folded edges. If you're working with certain types of fabric, another little tip is that you could actually insert a very fine piping cord inside this folded lip fabric just to give everything a little bit more structure along that folded edge if you felt that was necessary. That's just a little tip. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stitch along the line that I've already stitched, and I'm going to use a fixed stitch at the start and the end to secure everything so I can be really accurate, and if I need to just slow down and take my time as I get towards the end, I'll do that. So I'll start by just positioning and just making sure the needle's hitting in the right spot. So I want it to be hitting where I've put the chalk marking, but also where the stitching line is from when I sewed the lip initially. So I'm just going to remove that pin. Now I've got everything in place, and then I'm going to start stitching with that fixed stitch so that I can get real accuracy. I'm not back stitching, I'm using a fixed stitch because that will stitch on the spot several times to secure, so you can get absolute accuracy. Now as I come to the end, I'm just going to slow down so I can apply the fixed stitch again at the end and stop exactly where I need to. Okay. So So that's our first one sewn in place. As you can see, I've followed that line of stitching accurately. I am at a slightly different angle when I make these videos to what I would normally, because I would normally have my head right over the machine so I can get, you know, real accuracy. But obviously I need to keep my head out of the way so that you can see what's going on. But I just want to remove that pin now and make sure that this second lip is lining up accurately, that those raw edges are nice and butted together, and that my chalk markings are accurately lined up as well. And then I'm going to just apply the same principles again. So I'll find that cross where the end of the buttonhole is going to be and where my previous stitching line is. I've got my fixed stitch set up, and I'm just going to sew along that stitching line again now. Okay, so you can see there that everything's neatly sewn together, starting and finishing at these chalk markings and running along the original stitching line like so. Okay, so we've got the lips sewn to the fabric, and now comes the scary bit. You've now got to cut the fabric. So obviously this isn't scary for me. I'm doing it on a scrap of fabric. You know, if something goes wrong, it's not the end of the world. But when you're working on a real garment and you've spent a lot of time on the garment before you even get to the buttonholes, this bit can be mildly terrifying. So what I would recommend is do what I'm doing. Use scraps of the fabric you're actually working with and just do a little practice run before you go to the real thing, because any mistakes you'll make, you'll make on those scraps of fabric, and then you'll be able to learn and apply that to the real thing. So I find that embroidery scissors like these ones are the best to do this job with. I will link everything, as I said, below. So I'll link embroidery scissors for you below. They're all available on our website. But what you want to do is you want to cut down the centre between the two lips on this light denim fabric. You want to cut down the centre, but then you want to go out into a Y shape at the end. And it's important not to make that Y shape too shallow, because it won't give you enough fabric to work with, and you'll understand why when we come to the next part. But I'll just mark it with the Chaco pen to show you. I would probably go for something along those lines, so giving myself, plenty to work with at either end. If you go shallower than that with your triangle, you might find it really difficult. So I'm just going to pierce the fabric with the embroidery scissors, and I'm cutting up the centre there, and then I'll just open the lips, and I want to come across to where that final stitch was. Obviously be careful not to cut through the stitches, and then I'm going to do the same on the other side. So just careful you don't cut the lips, you just want to cut this denim fabric underneath and just cut up to where that stitching stops, and then we'll repeat at the other end. So again, you're just going up to where the stitching stops, and again on the other side, repeating the process. So there we have it. So we've done the scary bit, we've cut everything open, and now what you're going to do is push your lips through that hole that you've just created. So you just push everything through like so, and what you'll find then is everything is starting to take shape. So you can see there that everything is now starting to take shape, and you might want to, at this stage, you might want to give everything a press. You might want to hand sew the lips of the buttonhole together to keep it all together before you go to the next stages. And then the next stage will be to go over to the sewing machine and to sew the short edges of the buttonhole, which I'll show you next. Okay, so you've done the scary bit and you've folded everything through to the other side. Now we've got to secure everything on these short edges here. So if I turn it over, you can see that that's all secured in place, but we need to stitch down these edges here. So what I'm going to do is just turn it like so, fold that back on itself, and you can see there that I will be able to stitch along that triangle we've created, and that's why I said to try and make that a relatively long triangle, don't make it too short. We'll be able to stitch along there and secure it, making sure that the lips are lined up properly. And I like to go backwards and forwards over that a few times just to make sure everything's really secure. Now the foot I'm using for this is a Husqvarna machine, the Brilliant 75Q, but this foot is available for a lot of the Husqvarna machines. This is a narrow zipper foot, and you can attach it to the machine so that I can sew down that side, or I can flip it round if I need to sew something on the other side, but it'll just let me get nice and close to that fold. So I'm just going to position it. The other thing I can do on this machine as well is change needle positions, which again is available on a lot of machines these days. If you ever want to talk to us about getting a machine with any of these features, do get in touch. Drop us an email. We'd be happy to help. We love helping people find their dream machine. So if I just lower the foot so I can see that everything's where it should be, and then if I want to move the needle, I literally just press a button on the screen, and that just moves that needle position, which is fantastic for, I can't remember how many different needle positions there are on this one, but it's a lot, and it is available on a lot of different machines now, this feature. But it's fantastic for when you're doing things like this that require real precision and accuracy, but also things like zips and invisible zips and that sort of thing. The needle position is really helpful for, so just thought I'd point that out. But I can see there I've moved it along now, it's coming down right next to that fold of the fabric, so I'm just going to stitch along there, and then I'm going to go back and forth a couple of times just to make sure everything's really secure. You might want to just give the buttonhole a press before this stage. I'm not pressing in the video, but you know, just consider that if you want to press as you go. You might also want to hand sew the lips together before you do some of the other stages, just to make sure that they don't stretch out of shape. They're optional things that you can do. So let's just stitch across this short edge now and backtrack a few times just to secure everything. And then just reverse stitch the other way. And I'm going to go back again just for good measure, just to make sure everything's really secure. And then you can see that that's stitched in place now. And then you can see why having these extra long bits came into play then. It just sort of helps you make sure everything's lined up properly. And once you've secured it all, you can simply just snip that excess off to reduce the bulk, and then just snip away any stray long threads as well, get rid of those. And you can see there that that is now stitched in place nice and neatly. We know it's lovely and secure because we've gone back over it a few times. And then I'll just repeat that on the other side. And again, nice and neat on that side. You can see everything's really taking shape now and looking lovely. And we've got the confidence that everything's secure as well. Again, I can just snip off those excess bits of fabric now that I know it's all secured, and just trim off these stray threads. And this method is a method that's particularly good for bulky fabrics. There are different methods to sewing a bound buttonhole, and if you're doing one in a silk blouse or something, you know, you're probably going to use a completely different method to this. But this one, as you can see, I used denim because I thought, well, that's a nice bulky fabric. And like I said, you know, you might want to give that a press. You might want to hand sew the lips of the buttonhole together just to keep it together while you complete the next steps as well. Okay, so here we have the buttonhole on the right side of the garment. As I mentioned, I haven't pressed anything here, and you might want to hand stitch that together to keep it together while you're working. I haven't done that, but that's an option for you. But you can see on the back there, everything's neatly stitched in place. So what we need to think about now is how do you finish the wrong side of the garment. So what you would do is you would have your facing like so, and you would then need to create a rectangle on the facing to show you where you need to cut open, because you're going to repeat the cutting process again, I'm afraid. Another scary cutting process, but if you mark the corners, if you use a pin to mark the corners of the buttonhole, so I'm just pushing this pin through to what would be the facing fabric as well, just at those corners, so I can see where they are. Just push those in. I've done that at a bit of an angle because I'm trying to do it for the camera, but just push those in at the corners to show you where your rectangle is. And then on the wrong side, you can pull those through now. Just be careful because obviously pins are quite sharp, so just need to take a bit of care here. But then you can just use your Chaco pen. Again, these are great for accuracy for jobs like these. You can just use that to draw where that rectangle needs to be. And you can straighten all of this up with a ruler afterwards if you need to, so don't worry too much. As long as you can see where those points are, you can draw that triangle on. And then what you're going to do is you are going to open that up in the same way that you did the rectangle on the front. So you might decide you want to stitch around there, that rectangle, with some stitches, because that will also prevent you from getting any fraying in the corners. So that is an option to do that. Just literally follow the Chaco line that I've drawn. Probably start your stitching in the middle of one of the longer edges, so that if you back tack or whatever, that it's not going to be difficult like it would be on a corner. But you can stitch that rectangle in place on the fabric first. And then again, you're just going to repeat that same process. You want to go up the centre and you want to go and snip to those corners in the Y shape. So that's the first side done. And then again, repeat the process at the other end. And then you probably want to take this to your iron and just press those edges under like so. And then once you've done that, I'll go away and do that. And then once I've done that, I'm just going to position it over the buttonhole on the wrong side of the main fabric, like so. And then I'll be able to, I took all the triangles away. I'm just going to go and press this. I'm not going to film the pressing because it's not the most riveting part for you, obviously. But once you've done that, everything will sit nicely and you can position it over the buttonhole on the wrong side there. And then literally all you do is just slip stitch, hand stitch that in place, and you'll be able to hide any little stitches that might be visible. You'll be able to manipulate that with your hand sewing, and that is your bound buttonhole completed. Okay, so I've pressed the rectangle now. As I said, you might want to run some short stitches around the rectangle first to prevent any fraying at the corners and give you more accuracy. That's always an option. And then what I would do next to secure everything is just take a needle and thread in a thread colour close to the actual fabric here, and then I would just anchor the thread first, but then just run a slip stitch round the edge, so catch a fibre of the lighter blue fabric, and then stitch into the dark blue fabric just beneath there, and just work my way all around this rectangle. I'm not going to do it, but I'm just giving you a little demo of how to do a slip stitch in case anyone doesn't know. And then you'd go back into the lighter colour fabric. If you've got any fraying or any stitches showing, you can use your hand sewing to manipulate that and get everything stitched together nice and neatly. And then if we flip it over, you'll see the finished right side. So don't forget any tools I mentioned today, the Chaco pens, the embroidery scissors, all of those, the machine I use, they're all on our website, and you can find links to everything below. So I hope you all enjoyed that. I hope you picked up lots of useful tips and advice, and you're ready to go and tackle those bound buttonholes now. As I mentioned at the start of the video, everything I talk about today, all the tools I use, they're all available on our website, so do check out the links from those below. If you like what you see, please like and subscribe, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.